Hey guys. Tonight we wander down winding paths of sand and stone, through moonlit ruins and stories that history barely remembers. You're not in a museum or textbook right now. You're towing the border between myth and memory, where dust clings to your sandals and the wind tells tales no one else is awake to hear. The sky above is a velvet curtain freckled with stars, and somewhere in the far distance, a jackal yelps like it's laughing at your chances. Because the truth is, ancient Israel was no golden cradle of peace. It was dry, harsh, bloody. You probably wouldn't survive more than a week here, unless you were very quiet, and very good at hiding. Kings weren't always noble, prophets didn't always get listened to, and if you brought sandals into a throne room, you'd best be ready to run in them. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. I always love knowing who's drifting off from where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind stirs the fringe of your robe as you stand at the edge of the city, or what's left of it. The stones around you are warm from the day's sun, still holding heat like old memories. They're cracked and worn, toppled over one another like a forgotten game of cosmic dice. This was once a capital, the center of something proud, and now, just another pile of rubble in the desert. You stoop, running your fingers across the sandstone, a corner of a once mighty pillar. Carvings, faint but still visible, Hebrew, probably, or something close. A king's name, most likely, a title, a boast, and yet no one remembers him. Not really. Not like they remember the pharaohs or the Caesars or even the old Sumerian lords whose names sound like spells. The kings of Israel, especially the earliest ones, have mostly slipped through history's fingers. But you're here now, and if you're quiet, if you listen, you can still hear their stories echo beneath your feet. The air is dry, but not empty. It smells of old ashes and time, like a fire long since burned out. And in that scent, you sense something waiting to be remembered. Before there were kings, there were judges, not courtroom types with wigs. These were rough-edged warrior leaders, tribal guides who rose and fell with the crises around them. The land was divided, each tribe doing its own thing, only occasionally teaming up when someone bigger and scarier came knocking. Unity wasn't exactly in fashion. And then came Samuel. He's not a king, but he's close. Prophet, priest, judge, a whole resume rolled into one very tired, very burdened man. You can picture him now. Long beard, sharp eyes, probably smells like goat milk and incense. He's spent his life warning people to be better. Spoiler alert. They don't listen. They want a king, a real one. Someone who wears a crown and rides a horse and tells enemies to buzz off. Someone who looks like the kings of other nations. You can almost hear Samuel sighing as he trudges up the hillside, robes catching on dry brush, muttering under his breath. God says okay, but also says, you're not gonna like it. Which brings us to Saul, Israel's first king. You haven't met him yet, but you've heard whispers. Tall, handsome, serious. The kind of guy you'd cast in a movie if the audition was just a brooding stare and a sword held slightly too tight. He's anointed with oil by Samuel in secret. Like, literally, under a tree, away from the crowd, like some dramatic back alley coronation. It's not until later that the public ceremony happens. You stand near the edge of the crowd. The smell of roasting lamb drifting on the wind. Trumpets blare. Saul stands awkwardly tall above the rest, trying not to trip over his new royal robes. Historians still debate whether this was a smooth transition or an awkward mess. Probably a bit of both. Early kingship in Israel wasn't a polished machine. It was a donkey cart held together with rope, ambition, and the very vague idea that maybe, just maybe, this would work out. Your feet crunch over pebbles as you wander through what remains of Saul's capital, Gibeah. They think, though archaeological proof is fuzzy. And your guess is as good as any professor's after a long enough day. The ground here feels layered, like history piled itself up in a rush and forgot to label anything. A thorn bush catches your cloak. You pull it free, fingers stinging. Everything out here bites or burns. Even the stories. But there's something earnest about Saul. He's not evil, not at first. He's just overwhelmed. You can feel it in the way he moves. Always watching, always worrying. Imagine suddenly being made king of a people who aren't even sure what a king's supposed to do. The pressure, the isolation, and the battles. Ammonites, Philistines, internal squabbles. It's like being thrown into a lion pit with a wooden spoon. Your shoulders ache just thinking about it. You duck under a stone arch barely standing. This might have been part of the fortress. Now it's just a shadowy doorway. Perfect for imagining ghosts. Saul's reign starts with victories. He wins some fights. The people cheer. But under it all, a crack begins. Tiny. Hairline. Like the first stress fracture in a clay pot, harmless until the pressure mounts. And it will mount. You settle on a flat stone. Night has fully fallen. The stars above look like spilled salt. You feel a breeze crawl across your neck. Soft and cold, whispering of what's to come. Because every king's crown is heavy. But Saul's? It cuts. And just as your eyes start to close, the sound of steel scraping stone stirs you. That spear, he's gripping it again. You hear it before you see it, a sharp, metallic clink, like someone nervously turning a weapon in their palm. And then the firelight flickers, casting long, jittery shadows on the stone walls of the throne room. There he is, Saul, still tall, still handsome, but now his eyes are darker, hollowed out like something inside has been eaten away. You're standing near a column, heart quiet, breath slower than usual. The torch smoke curls in lazy ribbons, and your throat scratches just breathing it in. The spear is in his hand again. As always, he doesn't look at you. He barely blinks. He's staring at the wall like it's taunting him. Or maybe he's staring at something behind it. Something no one else can see. You shift your weight. Your knees ache a little. You've been here a while, watching this slow unravel. At first, Saul was decisive, focused. But now, he talks to himself. He orders strange rituals. He rants about loyalty, betrayal, destiny. Sometimes he calls out names that aren't in the room. The pressure of kingship is starting to crack him open like a sun-baked fig. Historically, some scholars argue Saul was simply a man out of his depth, pressed by external wars and tribal jealousy. Others whisper of mental illness. Centuries before we had a name for it. Either way, you're seeing it now, up close. And it's hard to look away. Because into all of this steps David. Ah yes, you've heard the songs. David and his harp. David the shepherd. David who slew the Philistine giant with nothing but a sling and a little sass. He's young, ruddy, which, frankly, just means kind of sunburned and bright-eyed. He's everything Saul used to be, and that's a problem. You remember the first time David walked into this room. The harp on his back. The way Saul's rage seemed to evaporate. Just for a moment. Music does that, doesn't it? Like balm on a burn. But the effect didn't last. It never does. And now, you watch as Saul's grip tightens on that ever-present spear. His knuckles are white, the skin stretched tight like the linen over a drum. He throws it, not at you. Don't worry, at David. Again. Misses. Again. It's almost routine now. Duck. Roll. Keep singing. Outside, you hear a horn in the distance. Maybe a watchman. Maybe an alarm. The Philistines are pressing in again. Always looking for a weak spot in the ever-fraying borders of this fledgling kingdom. And Saul? He's too busy scanning for shadows on the wall to look beyond it. The palace air smells of sweat and cedar. And fear. Saul's paranoia grows like a thorn bush, fast, wild, painful. He starts seeing betrayal in every glance. He orders priests executed, whole families exiled. You can barely keep track anymore. The nights stretch longer, the court emptier. You shift in your sandals, and the grit underfoot reminds you. This is a desert kingdom. Harsh land, harsh people, harsh fate, and still, David lives. He flees into the wilderness, scrambling over rocks, hiding in caves, sleeping with one eye open and a stone for a pillow. You see him sometimes, briefly, through the haze of your dreams. Always moving, always almost caught. The boy with the lion's courage and the lamb's heart. But Saul? Saul is still here, still brooding in this same room. The same cracked tiles, the same torchlight. A quirky little fact. Some old rabbinic traditions say Saul suffered from an evil spirit from the Lord, a poetic way of describing his inner torment. They didn't have DSM manuals. They had metaphors. And this spirit doesn't let up. You feel it too, don't you? That pressure? The kind that wraps around your ribs and squeezes. The kind that whispers that you're not enough. Even when you're king. Especially when you're king. Your mouth is dry. You sip from a wineskin. The water tastes like old leather and iron. But it's something. Your legs are tired. The stone bench beneath you feels colder now. Like it's remembering something it would rather forget. One night, Saul visits a witch. Yeah, really. You creep through the scrub grass with him. Under a full moon that makes everything feel haunted. He's desperate, terrified. Samuel is dead now. And God has gone quiet. No more dreams. No more prophets. The silence is unbearable. So Saul, the same man who banned sorcery, seeks out a medium. A woman in Endor. The irony tastes like burnt herbs on your tongue. She's nervous. Who wouldn't be? But she agrees. Summons Samuel, or something that looks like him. The Bible doesn't clarify. Scholars still argue whether the apparition was real, or a psychological break. Either way, it speaks. And what it says, not good. The battle tomorrow will be your last. Saul, you feel a chill. Not from the air, but from the resignation in Saul's face. Like a man already half buried. He thanks the woman, leaves quietly. No more rage, just silence. You walk behind him the next morning. Boots dragging in the dust. The sun is brutal. The armor is heavy. The Philistines line the hills. Confident and cruel. Your throat tightens. The battle is fast, brutal. Saul's sons fall first, including Jonathan, David's best friend. That bond? One of the oldest recorded examples of soul-level friendship. The kind that carves its initials on your heart. And Saul? When the arrows find him, he falls on his own sword. You stand beside his body on the hill of Gilboa. The wind is bitter. The silence even worse. His armor is stripped by enemies. His body pinned to a wall like a warning. The first king of Israel, reduced to a rumor. A warning. Your legs tremble, not from fear, from grief. Because for all his madness, all his fury, Saul was human, and here, among the rocks and vultures. That matters more than ever. And just as you close your eyes to mourn him, you hear footsteps. David is coming. The sun barely clears the horizon when David arrives. Its light soft as fresh linen and twice as fragile. You watch him dismount, slower now. Wearier than the harp-playing shepherd you remember from not so long ago. His boots sink into the blood-crusted soil of Gilboa, and he doesn't speak for a long time. Doesn't move, just stands there, staring at the place where Saul and Jonathan fell. The breeze tugs at his cloak like a needy child. Your breath catches in your chest, not from grief. Exactly, but from something heavier. The silence between rivals. David, who spent years fleeing this man. David, who was almost skewered by that familiar spear more times than anyone can count. But now, in the stillness of loss, none of that matters. He tears his garments. A raw, ancient gesture. Dust in the hair, ash on the forehead. The whole scene tastes of morning and dry earth. And the lament he sings? You feel it in your ribs. Saul and Jonathan, swifter than eagles, stronger than lions. You blink. The same voice that once coaxed sheep and lulled kings now echoes across a battlefield. David doesn't speak of betrayal, doesn't gloat. He doesn't call Saul a madman or a tyrant. He calls him beloved. He calls him beautiful. Even now, with Saul gone, David refuses to throw that final stone. Your knees ache as you lower yourself beside a thorn bush to listen. The thorns brush your arm, sharp, but not enough to bleed. Just enough to remind you. Love and pain often share roots. David won't take the crown yet. Not all of it, anyway. The kingdom is fractured. Northern tribes, southern tribes, everyone arguing, everyone suspicious. It's like trying to pour water into a clay jar with a crack down the middle. Instead, David goes to Hebron, where the tribe of Judah makes him king of the south. It's not much, just a regional title, but it's a start. Up north, Saul's general, Abner, props up one of Saul's surviving sons, Ish-bosheth. Try saying that 5 times fast. What follows is awkward. You're sitting near a campfire on a chill night when word comes of another skirmish. Another ambush. Another brother fighting brother episode in this never-ending tribal drama. The flicker of flames dances across soldiers' tired faces. And your stomach sours from the stew they're eating. Goat. Probably. Or whatever was slow enough to catch. David waits. He writes more psalms. He leads raids. He builds alliances. One day, news arrives. Ish-bosheth has been assassinated. By his own men. No less. They think they're doing David a favor. They are very wrong. He has them executed for treachery. Historically, this moment is a moral high note for David. Not just taking power, but refusing to do so by dishonor. Scholars still puzzle over it. Was it political performance? Or genuine integrity? Either way, it works. You walk with him as he enters Jerusalem. Not yet the glorious city it will become. But it's got potential. The walls are old. The streets smell like sweat and burnt grain. But to David, it smells like destiny. This is it. The capital. The throne. The whole package. You run your fingers along the stone as you pass, rough and pockmarked. Like a face that's seen things. And above you, the sounds of builders shouting, hammers clanging, goats bleating. A kingdom is rising. And David? He dances. Literally. You watch as he leaps and twirls in front of the Ark of the Covenant, which is being carried into the city. His robes fly. His face shines. His wife, Michal, watches from a window and shakes her head. You smile. She's not the only one. Modern readers and ancient scribes alike have side-eyed that moment. The king, the warrior, flailing about in linen like a festival fool. But you kind of get it. He's not just celebrating a box, he's celebrating survival. Freedom. The promise that maybe, just maybe, this crazy kingdom experiment might actually work. He expands the borders, writes poetry, listens to advisors. And people love him, mostly, but shadows still cling to his heels. You remember the moment things change. A rooftop, a bath, a woman named Bathsheba. You can still feel the breeze on your skin that night, warm. Heavy, like it's trying to warn you of something. He sees her, he wants her, he takes her, and everything begins to unravel. Uriah, her husband, a loyal soldier, is summoned from the front lines. David tries to cover his tracks. It doesn't work. Eventually, Uriah is sent back to battle with a sealed message. A death sentence. You hold the wax-sealed letter in your hand for a moment before it leaves. The wax is still warm. This is the David who danced. The David who sang psalms. The David who loved Saul and Jonathan. And now, he's orchestrated a quiet murder. Even the scrolls themselves seem to wince. The baby dies. Nathan, the prophet, calls him out with a parable so sharp it slices clean through David's self-deception. You still remember the sting of his words. You are the man. David breaks. Not loudly, not dramatically, but inwardly, like a temple pillar hollowed out by time. He writes another psalm, "Have mercy on me, O God." And you can practically taste the salt of his tears in the parchment ink. A quirky little tradition claims David's bed creaked from his weeping. That he soaked it nightly. Who knows? Maybe it's true. Maybe sorrow sounds like that. But he lives on. The child dies. But Bathsheba later gives birth to another son. Solomon. You'll get to him. But for now, David grows older, grayer. The palace feels colder. The throne heavier. He's not the shepherd boy anymore. He's not even the dancer. He's a man with blood on his hands and songs in his heart. And just as your eyes begin to drift shut, the sound of footsteps echo again, quick, sharp, full of purpose. Solomon is coming. You wake to the soft shuffle of velvet robes on polished stone. A new smell clings to the air, cedarwood and frankincense. Rich and heady. The fire has dimmed, but not gone out, and in its glow you see him, Solomon. Not yet old and wise. Not yet burdened by too much gold or too many regrets. For now, he's young, freshly anointed, eyes too bright for someone holding so much weight. Your joints creak as you rise from your spot near the wall, dusting off sand that never quite disappears. Outside the palace, the sun stretches its arms over the horizon, golden and lazy. The courtiers begin to stir. And somewhere in the inner court, Solomon whispers his famous prayer, not for riches, not for vengeance, but for wisdom. You smile at that. It's a good start. And it works. His early rain hums with clarity, like the air after a thunderstorm. You hear it in the way people speak his name in the marketplace, Solomon. The wise, Solomon. The just, Solomon. The man who split a baby. Yeah, about that. You remember the case clearly. 2 women. 1 baby. No DNA tests. Lots of drama. They both claim the child is theirs. Solomon listens, silent, still, and then says, "Let's cut the child in half." Gasps. The guards blink. 1 woman cries out, "No, give her the child." The other stands firm. And just like that, the truth falls into place. No blood, no blades, just insight. A trick, sure, but a brilliant one. The court hasn't stopped talking about it since. But Solomon doesn't rest on clever judgments alone. No, he builds. You step outside one morning to see the beginnings of something massive. Stone hauled from distant quarries. Timber shipped in from Lebanon. The sounds of hammers and chisels fill the air. Jerusalem itself seems to grow taller, more confident. The temple, that's the big project. 7 years in the making. And you're there for all of it. The gold gleams so brightly it hurts your eyes. The inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, is built to house the Ark of the Covenant. Only the high priest enters there, once a year, after a ritual so complicated you need a checklist. The dedication ceremony is wild. Smoke rises in great clouds. Music swells. Priests sing. The crowd sways in reverence and awe. You feel your chest tighten as Solomon prays aloud, voice trembling, tears catching in his beard. And when the fire falls from heaven to consume the offering, you nearly fall to your knees. This is it, the height of the kingdom. Israel at its most unified, most glorious, most gold-plated. Foreign leaders send gifts. The Queen of Sheba arrives with camels and questions, trying to stump Solomon, and leaves in awe, her retinue trailing behind like silk ribbons in the wind. The palace gardens bloom with imported lilies. The wine flows freely. Songs echo through courtyards where children chase one another in the shade. But the air is changing. You notice it first in the number of foreign wives, 1 or 2. Then 10. Then hundreds. Some say 700 wives and 300 concubines. Others think that's exaggerated, possibly symbolic, but either way, it's a lot. And with them come gods. Little ones at first, figurines tucked into robes, whispered prayers behind closed doors. Solomon builds shrines, for their sake. He says, not for himself. But you watch his eyes change. Just a little. The sharpness dulls. The certainty flickers. Historians still debate whether Solomon truly worshipped those foreign deities or merely tolerated them. But the result? Division. A hairline fracture in the unity he'd worked so hard to build. Your feet ache from walking the ever-expanding palace. The stones here are cooler, smoother, imported, expensive. You pass through echoing halls where no one seems to look anyone else in the eye. The taxes climb. The workers grumble. The kingdom groans under the weight of Solomon's ambition. You sit in the garden one night, alone. The stars peek through the latticework above. Somewhere nearby, musicians play a mournful tune. And you wonder, can wisdom survive wealth? A fringe story floats your way, one of Solomon trying to speak to animals. Birds, ants, demons. Some say he wore a ring with God's true name on it, giving him power over all things. Others call that folklore, but you don't mind. It's the kind of story that lingers in the folds of memory. Long after the facts fade, you see Solomon less and less now. He walks with a slower gait, his once bright eyes weighed down by something invisible. The light in the palace is softer, dimmer, as if even the sun is tired. You remember the words he wrote, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. Maybe that came later. Maybe it came in a moment like this, when even gold feels cold in your hands. He dies in his sleep, peacefully. They say, the kingdom he leaves behind is vast, adorned, powerful, and fragile. And just as the people begin to gather for the funeral rites, just as incense smoke rises to mark the end of an era, you feel it, the crack in the clay pot. And it's starting to split. The wind feels different today, sharper, more uncertain. You wrap your cloak tighter, stepping out onto a balcony that overlooks a city that no longer seems to know who it belongs to. The scent of cedar and incense still clings to the palace walls. But something sour creeps in underneath. Burnt bread, frustration, fear. Solomon is gone, and the throne now belongs to Rehoboam, his son. Though you wouldn't call him his father's equal. Not yet, maybe not ever. He stands in the court, flanked by older advisors with wrinkled foreheads and slow voices, and younger men with loud laughs and louder plans. You watch him listen to both camps, his face unreadable as stone. Then he makes a choice. And oh, it is the wrong one. The elders suggest kindness. Lighten the people's load. They say, speak gently, and they will follow you. But the younger men, Rehoboam's childhood friends, slick with confidence, laugh that off. Make it harder. They urge, show them who's boss. Rehoboam listens to the loud ones. You're there when he delivers his answer to the northern tribes. My father whipped you with whips. He says, but I will whip you with scorpions. You flinch. The silence after those words is long and stiff as dry leather. Then the crowd erupts, not in applause, but in fury. Dust flies. Voices rise. You back into a shadowy alcove as someone hurls a rock. The kingdom, barely cooled from Solomon's funeral pyres, now splits in two like a clay jar dropped on stone. 10 tribes break away. They crown Jeroboam, a former servant, now king of the north. Israel, the original name. Rehoboam clings to the south, Judah. Jerusalem remains his. But the rest? Gone. You wander through the borderlands sometime after, your sandals scraping over dry grass. Everything feels thinner now. Not just geographically, spiritually, like the land itself knows it's been carved in half. Jeroboam, you find, wastes no time. He sets up 2 golden calves, yes, again, with new altars, new priests, new festivals. It's like he's trying to reboot religion in a hurry. His advisors likely thought it was smart politics. Keep people from going to Jerusalem. They'd say, keep worship local. Convenient. But you smell the fear behind it. And you remember what happened the last time golden calves were involved. Spoiler. It didn't end well. You sit near one of the new altars, Bethel. Maybe Dan. Listening to the low murmur of uncertain prayers. The smoke rises crookedly, not from poor design, but from a kind of cosmic discomfort. This place wasn't meant for this. Back in Judah, Rehoboam tries to hold what's left. Fortresses rise, garrisons expand, but the heart of the kingdom feels hollowed out. You walk through streets where traders speak in hushed tones, and old women clutch their amulets a little tighter. A mainstream fact. This split in the kingdom is one of the most pivotal events in Israel's history. Everything that comes after, wars, prophets, exiles, traces back to this fracture. Scholars still argue whether the break was inevitable or just the result of one foolish sentence with too many scorpions. And in the middle of it all, you stand, 1 foot in Judah, 1 foot in Israel, listening, watching, breathing in the dust of 2 kings who might have been brothers, but chose thrones over unity. One night, while sleeping under the stars just outside Shechem, you dream of Solomon's old throne, empty now, covered in spiderwebs, and behind it, the cracked wall with that first small fracture, now gaping wide enough to swallow armies. You wake to distant drums. Rehoboam and Jeroboam are already fighting. Your legs ache from walking. You've been chasing treaties and skirmishes across the hills for weeks. This king builds alliances. That one breaks them. One king marries strategically. The other assassinates inconvenient prophets. You sit on a hill overlooking the battlefield of Mount Zemaraim, where Rehoboam tries to reclaim the north. The dust clouds churn like angry spirits. But the north holds. Jeroboam survives. Judah retreats. And yet, none of them feel victorious. The people? They're tired. You help an old man rethatch his roof in Tirzah. His hands shake. He doesn't speak of kings. He speaks of goats, of drought, of wondering if God has moved farther away, or if the people simply built too many walls between them and heaven. Sometimes, you wonder too. A quirky inscription you see carved on a stone outside a northern shrine reads, "To the God who walks in 2 places." It makes you pause. Clever, poetic, desperate. Back in Jerusalem, Rehoboam grows quieter. His hair grays early. He strengthens borders, taxes reluctantly, worships publicly. But the shine is gone. The temple is still there, Solomon's glory, but the crowds are thinner. The psalms echo off the stone with less certainty. You walk the corridor near the royal chambers, and the palace smells less of perfume now, and more of parchment and cold metal. And just when you think things might stabilize, news comes of Egypt. They're on the move again. You race south through cracked hills and olive groves gone wild. Shishak, pharaoh of Egypt, is marching up through Judah, and Rehoboam, this stubborn, divided, tired king, has no choice but to surrender. He hands over treasure, sacred artifacts, golden shields. The temple is ransacked. Jerusalem's pride dimmed. You press your hand against the gate as Egyptian soldiers march by, their sandals slapping in rhythm. Your fingertips feel the cold iron studs, and you whisper a prayer that no one hears. And just as you think this can't get any more bitter, you spot Jeroboam again, older now, haunted. He too is losing grip, his own son ill. The prophet Ahijah already predicting disaster. You see him pacing in his garden, muttering to idols he never really believed in. The 2 kings who tore the kingdom apart. They will both die quietly. And just as the dust begins to settle, another prince sharpens his ambition. You hear the sharpening before you see the blade. A soft, rhythmic scrape in a darkened chamber, metal on stone. Slow and deliberate, you step closer, peering through the half-drawn curtain. And there he is, Baasha, a general, a man from the tribe of Issachar, whose eyes reflect only calculation, not noble ambition, not even anger, just the cold arithmetic of power. The northern kingdom of Israel has already burned through a few kings in record time. Jeroboam is gone, his line shattered. His son, Nadab, barely lasted 2 years before Baasha crept up from behind and ended it all with a dagger and a whisper. Now Baasha wears the crown. You trail behind his horse as he rides through Tirzah, his new capital. The city hums with tension, fresh banners hang from broken walls. And the smell of spilled oil and burnt offerings lingers in the morning air like guilt. You pass a woman sweeping her doorstep with quick, nervous hands. No one speaks Jeroboam's name anymore. Baasha rules with grit and suspicion. He rebuilds, yes, but also watches. Closely, too closely. He kills off all remaining heirs of Jeroboam's family. Probably just to be safe. Historians still argue whether this was politically necessary or simply savage cleanup. You sit near the city gate one evening, overhearing 2 merchants debate it. Neither sounds convinced. Both look over their shoulders. Meanwhile in the south, Judah limps along under a king named Asa. Now he's a different breed. You first see him pacing outside Jerusalem's temple. Not in a robe but a coarse tunic. He doesn't smile much, but the people talk about him with a strange kind of affection. He tears down pagan shrines. He removes his own grandmother from power when she starts setting up Asherah poles in the garden. Family drama, ancient edition. You pass through Asa's city just as he's fortifying it, new gates. Stronger walls. You run your hand along freshly laid bricks. Still damp with mortar. The air smells of lime and sweat. But also, hope. For once. But the peace doesn't last. Baasha starts building a blockade, Ramah, right on Judah's northern border. You hike up a dusty hill and see the construction for yourself. It's close. Intentionally close. Asa doesn't take it well. He does something bold, maybe too bold. He bribes Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, Syria, to attack Israel from the north. And it works. Baasha has to retreat, leaving Ramah behind like an unfinished threat. Asa moves in, tears it down, repurposes the materials for his own cities. It's clever, efficient, also shady. A prophet named Hanani calls him out for relying on politics instead of prayer. Asa doesn't appreciate the advice. He imprisons Hanani and keeps limping forward. You walk both courts, north and south. The air in Israel always feels tenser, like a storm that never breaks. In Judah, things are slower, more measured, but still restless. You start to feel it in your knees. That sense that both kingdoms are on borrowed time. In Israel, Baasha dies. Just dies. No drama. But his son Elah? Not so lucky. He lasts 2 years before Zimri, one of his own commanders, kills him during a drunken party. Yes, really, you're there, leaning against a pillar as the shouting starts. A goblet crashes. The candlelight flickers. Zimri walks out with blood on his sleeves and ambition in his eyes. But his reign? 7 days. You blink. 7 days and the people revolt, preferring a general named Omri instead. Zimri, realizing he's cornered, burns the palace down, with himself inside. You smell the smoke for days. It clings to your robe, your hair, your lungs. Omri takes over, and suddenly, everything shifts. He's strong, strategic, and utterly uninterested in the religious squabbles of his predecessors. You watch him build a new capital, Samaria. The construction is methodical, precise. Roads are widened, trade increases. Diplomats from neighboring nations begin to arrive, their camels jingling with bells and jewels. Omri is so good at governing. In fact, that later Assyrian inscriptions still refer to Israel as the land of Omri, long after he's gone. He doesn't waste time with flashy miracles or flaming altars. He builds. He rules. He marries his son to a Phoenician princess. Her name? Jezebel. But she hasn't arrived yet. Not quite. For now, Omri stands atop a rising hill, watching Samaria take shape beneath him. You stand beside him briefly, your eyes burning from the dust of construction. The wind is dry, but steady, the kind of wind that carries legacies. And yet, the altars remain. In Judah, Asa grows old. His feet swell, literally. Some say from disease. Others think it's symbolic of his stubbornness. A metaphor for a man who stood strong, but no longer moved forward. You visit him in his final days. The room heavy with the smell of salves and age. He doesn't say much, but his eyes still flicker toward the temple. His son Jehoshaphat will take his place. But not just yet. Back in Samaria, Omri's health begins to fade. He's not one for dramatic farewells. He leaves quietly, the throne passing to Ahab. And that's when things start to really burn. But just before the fire, there is silence, the kind that settles in the cracks of cities and hearts, the kind that comes before storms. You sit on a rooftop in Samaria, watching the sun melt into the hills. Children chase one another in the street below. Merchants haggle over figs and dyed wool. Somewhere, a dog barks. You close your eyes. You know what's coming. And just as you start to rest, you catch the faint scent of foreign perfume on the wind. Jezebel has arrived. The perfume hits you before the procession does, thick, floral, almost choking in the dry heat of Samaria. You're standing just off the main road, pressed between curious locals and wide-eyed merchants. As the new queen's caravan sweeps through the gates, silk rustles, gold glints, the camels even look smug. And there she is, Jezebel. She doesn't bow, doesn't wave. She looks straight ahead, chin high, lips painted red like a warning. Her eyes, lined with coal so dark it seems to drink the sunlight, sweep the crowd. Cool and unreadable, you shift your weight, trying to breathe through the incense-heavy air. There's something electric about her, like lightning wrapped in velvet. Some cheer, some stare. A few already whisper, a Phoenician queen married into the northern kingdom? Some call it savvy politics. Others mutter about curses. But Ahab? He smiles. You trail behind him later that evening, through the halls of the palace. The walls are freshly polished. The servants speak in hushed tones. Ahab has inherited Omri's practicality, but he's traded some of it for charm, and quite a bit of it for love. He builds a temple, not for Yahweh, but for Baal. That's new. You watch stone blocks laid under a moonlit sky, each one humming with controversy. He raises an altar, sets up an Asherah pole. Jezebel's priests arrive soon after, hundreds of them, dressed in bright robes, chanting songs that don't quite fit this land. You feel it in your stomach. A turning. The people? Some don't care. Some are just happy the trade routes are open and the roads are safer. Others are nervous. But Jezebel doesn't flinch, and Ahab doesn't stop her. You walk with Elijah next. You meet him in the wilderness, hair wild, cloak battered, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. He smells like ash and goat's wool. He doesn't bother with politics or pleasantries. He walks straight to the palace and announces a drought. Just like that. No rain, no dew, no moisture at all, until he says so. Then he vanishes. For years, you follow him to a brook that dries up, then to a widow's house, where oil and flour never run out. You watch him raise her son from the dead, not with ceremony, but with desperation, hands pressing, voice crying out. It's the kind of moment that makes legends and skeptics. Meanwhile, in Samaria, things crack. The drought hits hard. Crops wither. Wells fail. Cattle die. The land turns brittle. You walk across dust that used to be fields. Your lips chap. Your throat tightens. The people start wondering, where is Baal now? God of rain and storm? Jezebel's temples offer no answers. Only more incense. And Elijah? He returns. You feel it the moment he steps back into the city. The wind shifts. Birds scatter. Ahab sees him and snarls. Is that you, troubler of Israel? Elijah doesn't blink. It's not me, he says. It's you. He proposes a showdown. Mount Carmel. You make the climb with the crowd, up rocky paths, past gnarled trees, into thin, crisp air. On one side, hundreds of Baal's prophets. On the other, Elijah, alone. A mainstream historical detail here. Mount Carmel was a well-known sacred site even before this. A kind of spiritual crossroads. A perfect stage. The challenge? 2 altars. 2 sacrifices. No fire allowed. The God who answers with flame is the true God. Baal's prophets go first. All morning. They dance, shout, cut themselves. Blood runs. You taste iron on the wind. Nothing happens. Elijah? He builds his altar with quiet hands. 12 stones. 1 for each tribe. He pours water over the wood. Once. Twice. A third time. The trench around the altar fills. Then he prays. You barely finish blinking before fire falls. It consumes the wood, the stones, the water, the sacrifice, even the dust. You feel the heat on your face from 30 paces away. The crowd falls silent, then roars. The Lord, He is God. The prophets of Baal are seized, executed. Jezebel? She's not amused. She swears to kill Elijah by the next day. So he runs. You run with him. Through the wilderness. Into despair. He curls under a broom tree and begs to die. You've never seen him like this, so human. So hollowed out. An angel feeds him. He walks 40 days and nights to Mount Horeb. There, in a cave, he waits. A great wind comes. Then an earthquake. Then fire. But God? Not in any of those. Then, a whisper. You don't even hear the words. Only Elijah does. But when he emerges from the cave, his eyes are softer. Less storm. More rain. He's sent back, not to end Jezebel, not to crown a new king, but to keep walking, to keep witnessing the long, slow work of change. Back in Samaria, Jezebel isn't done. She's consolidating power, arranging alliances, painting walls and tightening rings around the court. You see her one evening in a tower window, brushing her hair with long, deliberate strokes. And just as you're about to turn away, a scream echoes from the courtyard. Another prophet has arrived, and this time, there's blood in the air. The courtyard is stained now, not just with blood, but with tension so thick it settles in your throat like smoke. You stand in the shadows, eyes tracking the newcomer, Elisha, Elijah's successor, though not his twin. Where Elijah was fire and thunder, Elisha is quieter, still water, but deep. He walks through Samaria's streets with a kind of casual confidence, as though the dust doesn't stick to his robes. The people part for him, not out of fear, but curiosity. His miracles are subtler at first. He purifies water in Jericho with a sprinkle of salt. He helps a poor widow by multiplying oil. Small things, practical things. You watch the relief wash over faces like rain on cracked earth. Meanwhile, Ahab is still king, still loyal to Jezebel, still playing politics with neighboring kingdoms. He's not evil, not in the way fairy tales write villains, but he's weak. You see it in his eyes when he walks the halls, shoulders sagging just a little more each day. Then comes Naboth. It's just a vineyard, a small plot near the palace. Ahab wants it for a vegetable garden. Naboth says no, sacred land. Family inheritance, not for sale. Ahab sulks. Yes, sulks. He goes home, lies on his bed, and refuses to eat. You roll your eyes. But then Jezebel steps in. And when Jezebel steps in, things escalate. She writes letters in Ahab's name, accuses Naboth of blasphemy, sets up a mock trial, has him stoned to death. You hear the stones hit from your rooftop perch. The sound is dull and final. Naboth's blood soaks into the very soil he died protecting. Jezebel hands the vineyard to Ahab with a smile. You're not the only one watching. Elijah returns. You follow him through the vineyard's broken gate. Dust clinging to your sandals. He meets Ahab under the withering vines and doesn't yell, he simply declares. Ahab's house will fall. Dogs will lick Jezebel's blood. The image makes your stomach tighten. Ahab shudders, and in a surprising twist, he repents, tears his robes, wears sackcloth, fastens humility like a belt. God delays the judgment, says it won't happen in Ahab's lifetime. A strange, merciful pause, but judgment always arrives. Sooner or later, you follow Ahab into his last battle. Ramoth Gilead. The court prophets say go. They say he will win. They're loud, uniform, suspiciously enthusiastic. Then Micaiah steps up, a true prophet. Not on anyone's payroll, and says the opposite. He speaks of deception, of a lying spirit in the mouths of false prophets. Ahab listens, then ignores him. You sit in Ahab's chariot as he disguises himself, removing his royal robes and hiding among his troops. Smart, perhaps, but fate doesn't play fair. A random arrow, shot by no one in particular, not aimed, not planned. It finds the gap in his armor. You hold him upright as blood seeps from his side. His hands are cold, his lips whispering prayers or curses, you can't quite tell. At sunset, he dies. The chariot returns to Samaria, red with his blood. And yes, the dogs lick it up. You wish that were metaphor. But it isn't. Jezebel reigns as queen mother now. Still powerful, still watching. But the cracks are growing deeper. Back in Judah, things are shifting too. Jehoshaphat, Asa's son, tries diplomacy. He allies with Ahab through marriage. Tries to unite north and south again. Like stitching up a torn garment. But the seams don't hold. The dye doesn't match. Meanwhile, in Israel, kings come and go with dizzying speed. Ahaziah, Jehoram, brief reigns, short stories, none with staying power. The throne is a revolving door. You can barely keep names straight. The people stop chanting them in the streets. They've seen this before. They know how it ends. And you? You're tired. You sit outside Samaria's walls one evening, watching the city flicker in the twilight. The sky is peach and purple. A shepherd sings somewhere in the distance. The wind smells of olives and old smoke. And then, hoofbeats. Fast, furious, a chariot kicking up dust. You squint. It's Jehu. He drives like a madman. Literally. People recognize his chariot by how recklessly it tears through the hills. He's a commander, a soldier, and now, by divine decree, a king in waiting. Elisha had sent a young prophet to anoint him in secret. Oil poured, words whispered, a prophecy fulfilled. Jehu doesn't wait. He rides straight to Jezreel. You run to keep up. Feet burning, lungs raw. The city guards spot him coming and shout, "Is it peace?" Jehu shouts back, "What peace? While your mother Jezebel still practices sorcery and idolatry?" You arrive at the gate as Jezebel, now older, paints her eyes and looks down from her window. Still defiant, still regal. Did Zimri have peace? She calls out, "Who murdered his master?" Jehu gives a signal. 2 eunuchs throw her down. You flinch. Her body hits the stones. Horses trample it. Later, when they come to bury her, all they find are skull, feet, and hands. And yes, again, the dogs. You sit outside the palace ruins that night, head in your hands, eyes red. The stars above seem duller. The fire nearby casts flickering shadows like ghosts dancing on broken walls. The house of Omri is gone. The palace is quiet, and just as the wind begins to rise, carrying dust and the faint scent of blood, you hear it. A baby cries. A new dynasty has begun. The newborn's wail fades into the night, soft and thin as a thread of smoke. You stand on the edge of a courtyard still stained from Jezebel's fall. And for a moment, it feels like history might finally rest. The fires are out. The palace is quiet. The last of the house of Omri lies buried, or scattered. But peace in Israel is a dream the land keeps forgetting how to hold. Jehu now wears the crown. He's no diplomat, no poet, just a sword with legs. And he wastes no time using it. You trail him through the streets of Samaria, where his soldiers round up every priest of Baal they can find. He's got a plan. Oh yes, a trap. He announces a great festival, bigger than any Baal celebration yet. He even says, Ahab served Baal a little, Jehu will serve him much. Your eyebrows rise. The temple fills with color and noise, chants, incense, robes swaying like candle flames. Baal worshippers come from every hill and hollow. You watch them file in with cautious joy. The stone floor trembles from so many feet. It smells of foreign oils and false hope. Then the doors close. Jehu's men enter, and none leave alive. Blood runs between the altar tiles. You feel it in your boots. The temple is torn down. Its stones scattered. Its sacred objects smashed into silence. From a religious standpoint, Jehu looks like a reformer. He wipes out Baal worship in one bold, bloody move, but dig deeper, and the picture gets muddy. He doesn't remove the golden calves at Bethel and Dan. Those politically convenient idols stay put. Historians debate this. Was Jehu faithful? Or just pragmatic? Did he serve God, or only his own survival? You sit near the edge of a dried-up pool, feeling the weight of that question settle across your shoulders. Jehu reigns for nearly 3 decades. But the peace he wins is like glass, hard, shiny, and terrifyingly easy to shatter. Assyria is stirring. You see the messengers arrive from the east, faces pale beneath layers of dust. The empire is expanding again. Their scribes carve Jehu's tribute into stone. The famous black obelisk still bears his kneeling figure. Beard and all, the only known depiction of an Israelite king from the time. Jehu, not proud but bowing, paying silver, gold, and submission. You walk the borderlands where Assyrian influence begins to seep through. Merchants speak new words. Governors look eastward. Fear begins to smell familiar again. Jehu dies. His son Jehoahaz takes the throne. And things get worse. The army shrinks. The enemies grow. Aram, in particular, presses hard. You count the chariots left, fewer than 24. Israel, once a roaring lion, now whimpers like a cornered fox. But even in the dark, there's light. Elisha is still alive, older now, his beard silver, eyes gentler than Elijah's ever were. You find him one afternoon leaning on a staff, surrounded by children who hang on his every word. He performs miracles still. He tells a general, Naaman of Aram, to wash in the Jordan to cure his leprosy. Naaman scoffs at first, muddy water? But then he tries it. And it works. The joy on his face could outshine the sun. You help distribute bread to a hungry village. Elisha prays over a few loaves. And they stretch, somehow, impossibly, to feed everyone. Your belly swells with both food and wonder. But Elisha's greatest miracles are not always public. Once, you watch him pray for his servant's eyes to be opened, not physically, but spiritually, and suddenly, the servant sees armies of fire, horses of flame, circling the hills, a reminder that even when the world seems small and scared, the unseen can be vast and mighty. Still, the politics grind on. Jehoahaz is followed by Jehoash. Then Jeroboam too. The names blur like footprints in mud. Some do better than others. The borders expand again. The coffers refill. But the soul of the kingdom? Fractured. You remember a quirky bit of trivia here. There were so many Jeroboams, Jehoashes, Jeharams, and Joashes between both kingdoms. It's a miracle the scribes didn't just start numbering everyone from the beginning. You've seen scribal tablets with corrections in the margins. Even they got confused. During Jeroboam I's reign, Israel enjoys a rare stretch of prosperity. The markets buzz. The olive presses overflow. You sip wine on a rooftop and almost believe things will last. But underneath? Rot. The poor are crushed. Justice is sold like bread. The rich build summer homes lined with ivory while the hungry starve in the alleyways. Prophets begin to raise their voices again. Amos from the south. Blunt and uninvited, you hear him cry out in the marketplace. His voice as sharp as broken glass. Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream. The crowd jeers, but you notice something. Heads turn. A few linger. Some walk away quieter than they arrived. And just as Jeroboam's golden age peaks, he dies. The kingdom begins to tilt again. Assyria's shadow grows longer. And one morning, as you walk the steps of the palace in Samaria, your fingers brushing the cool stone railings worn down by years of kings and wishes, you see a banner snap in the wind. It bears no crown, only a black, winged beast. The Assyrians are coming. You wake to the thud of marching feet, steady, measured, like a drumbeat that never quite fades. From your perch atop a stone outcrop, you watch a cloud of dust rise on the horizon. Spears glint in the morning sun. Banners flutter with strange emblems. And behind it all, the shadow of empire moves like a tide no wall can hold back. Assyria has arrived. They don't roar in all at once. They whisper first, messengers. Tribute demands. Veiled threats. Then come the sieges. Then the slaughter. You feel it in the air. This creeping certainty that something enormous is pressing down on the land. Back in Samaria, panic brews like spoiled wine. Kings rise and fall like dice tossed in a game gone wrong. Zechariah rules for 6 months. Assassinated. Shallum lasts a month. Killed. Menahem, his killer, takes the throne and keeps it, for 10 full years, but only by paying Assyria 1,000 talents of silver. You help count it once. It takes days. He taxes the rich to raise the money. Of course, some scream, some leave, most just shrink inward, trying to vanish under the weight of it all. Then come Pekahiah, then Pekah, more chaos, more assassinations. You stop bothering to remember who's king this week. The throne has become a haunted chair, and no one seems to want it without drawing blood first. In Judah, King Uzziah offers some stability. You first see him in a public square, raising funds for aqueducts and towers. He loves agriculture, oddly enough, walks his vineyards with the kind of pride you'd expect from a farmer. Not a monarch. Under him, Judah grows strong again, at least on the outside. But then, pride. He enters the temple one day, swinging incense like he owns the place. The priests object. He ignores them. And right there, in the sacred place, leprosy blooms across his forehead. He flees, never enters public life again. His son, Jotham, rules in his stead. You see Jotham watching his father from a distance, helpless, quiet. There's sadness in his eyes, but also fear. Later, Ahaz takes the throne. And oh, Ahaz. You meet him in his private courtyard, where stone idols line the walls and foreign banners ripple from high poles. He allies with Assyria, sacrifices to their gods, even burns one of his sons in a fire. You turn your head when that happens. You don't want to see. But the smell lingers. Ash and iron and regret. The temple doors are shut. The altars defiled. You walk past them one night, and the silence feels thick and wrong, like a song stopped mid-note. But then comes Hezekiah, and for once, something shifts. He's young, determined, a bit nervous, maybe, but that's not a flaw. Not here. He reopens the temple, cleans it, rededicates it. You watch priests scrub the floors on hands and knees, sweat mixing with sacred oil. The trumpets sound again. People cry, not from grief, but from something close to joy. He destroys the idols, even the bronze serpent Moses once made, because it had become an object of worship. You touch its broken remains in a storeroom once cool and green, but lifeless now. A prophet walks beside him. Isaiah. You don't see fire in Isaiah's eyes, you see weight. His words fall like stones, building and crushing at once. He calls Jerusalem a city of blood and a faithless bride. But then he speaks of a child, a branch from Jesse's stump, a future that shimmers like morning dew. Hope and warning, all in one breath. But Assyria doesn't care for prophecies. Sennacherib comes. His army stretches across the land like spilled ink. You hear the siege of Lachish before you see it, screams. Cracking wood, fires that light the sky orange. The city falls. You pass the stone reliefs carved in Nineveh later, images of spears, ropes, impaled captives. You wish those weren't accurate, but they are. Now Jerusalem waits. You walk its walls at night, hearing prayers whispered between cracks in the stone. Hezekiah builds a tunnel, a miracle of engineering. You crawl through it once, torch in hand, the water lapping at your legs. When it's finished, the city has water even under siege. But the fear is real. Sennacherib sends messengers, loud ones. They stand by the wall and shout in Hebrew so everyone can understand. Don't trust Hezekiah, they say. No God has saved any city we've conquered. Yours won't either. The people tremble. Hezekiah doesn't. He takes the letter, yes, the literal scroll of threats, and lays it in the temple. You stand at the threshold as he prays. Eyes closed, hands open, not grand, not poetic, just real. God, see what they've written. Isaiah sends a message. They won't enter the city. That night, the wind shifts. You feel it brushing your face as you lie on the palace steps, wrapped in a wool cloak. It smells faintly of cedar and something sharper, like the edge of lightning. You fall asleep to the sound of nothing, and awaken to silence still. But this time, it's different. Sennacherib's camp is quiet, too quiet. You creep to the wall, look down. The army is still, very still. They say 185,000 died overnight. The Bible blames an angel. Some historians point to plague. No one really knows, but the result is the same. Sennacherib retreats. Jerusalem breathes again. You walk the streets in stunned relief. Children laugh. Women dance. A man weeps while kissing the stones of the gate. Your legs feel unsteady, but not from fear, from release. And just as Hezekiah lays down to rest, the tunnel still flowing beneath the city, Isaiah speaks again. Another kingdom will rise. Not Assyria. Something farther. Something colder. Babylon. The word Babylon feels like a tremor even before it becomes a threat. You hear it first in whispers. Traders speaking hurriedly over sacks of barley. Scribes pausing mid-scroll. It hangs in the air like incense from a foreign altar. Sweet and sour all at once. You sit under a fig tree outside Jerusalem. Fingers sticky with fruit, watching the sun dip low behind the hills. Somewhere behind you, the temple bells toll gently, still echoing the last days of Hezekiah's quiet strength. The city survived Assyria. The people believe they are untouchable now. But kingdoms don't wear armor forever. Hezekiah dies. His son takes the throne. Manasseh. You sigh just thinking his name. At first, you hope for wisdom, a continuation of his father's devotion. But Manasseh takes a different path, a darker one, and with him, so do you, reluctantly, silently, a shadow at the edge of the royal court. He rebuilds the high places, the shrines his father tore down. The altars that had once been ground to dust rise again like weeds after rain. Baal, Asherah, Molech, the names return, carved into wood and whispered in alleys. The temple? Defiled. You walk its inner courts one evening and find statues where none should be. Incense rising from corners that were meant to remain untouched. The air smells wrong, sweet, thick, almost metallic. You taste copper at the back of your throat. And the children, you don't want to remember that part. But it happened. Burning sacrifices in the valley of Hinnom. Screams swallowed by fire. You turn away. Again and again. But the stench stays with you. On your cloak. In your hair. In your dreams. Manasseh rules for 55 years. A mainstream historical fact. That's the longest reign of any king in Judah. And somehow, it's also among the most spiritually devastating. Scholars argue whether he truly repented later in life. One tradition says he was taken captive by the Assyrians, cried out to God, and was restored. But that story only shows up in Chronicles. The Book of Kings? Silent on redemption. You walk past his statue once, a newer one, placed in a public square. It's too tall, too smooth, like it's trying to forget the blood in its shadow. His son Amon takes the throne briefly. Very briefly. He doubles down on his father's idolatry. Refuses to repent. He's assassinated in his own palace. You feel no surprise. Only the numb tingle of another wheel turning. But then comes something unexpected. A boy, 8 years old. Josiah. You watch him from the sidelines, curious, unsure. At first, he's just a child among advisors. But over the years, something shifts. You see it in his eyes as he listens to the scribes. In the way he walks through the temple ruins, touching each column with a kind of sacred reverence. And then it happens. The scroll. You're there when it's found, in a forgotten room during renovations. Dust covered, fragile. They hand it to Shaphan the scribe, who reads it to Josiah. You watch the young king's face pale, then burn red, then crumple with grief. He tears his robes. And just like that, everything changes. The altars fall again. The high places burn. The priests of Baal are deposed. Ashes fill the streets, thick as snow. You help shovel them with your bare hands. The smoke stings your eyes, but not your spirit. Josiah calls the nation to repentance. He reads the scroll aloud in the city square. His voice trembles but doesn't break. The crowd stands still. You stand still. The words fall like rain after drought. And then, the Passover. You haven't seen a celebration like it in generations. Maybe never. The lambs. The songs. The scent of roasted meat carried on night winds. People laugh and cry in the same breath. You close your eyes and think maybe, just maybe, this time it will last. But Babylon looms. You hear their messengers before you see them. Babylonians, slick with silk and smirks, come to congratulate Josiah. They leave with maps, measurements, stories. You know what this is. Spies. And then comes a mistake. Josiah hears of Egypt marching through. Pharaoh Necho, heading north to fight Babylon. Josiah decides to intercept him, perhaps in defense of Assyria, or just to assert strength. You walk beside him as the army marches toward Megiddo. The field is wide, the grass golden, the sky blue, and then, it ends. An arrow finds Josiah. He's pulled from the chariot, blood soaking his tunic. You press a cloth to the wound, but it's no use. His breaths are shallow, his eyes unfocused. You whisper psalms, not sure if he hears them. He dies at just 39. Jerusalem mourns like never before. Jeremiah writes a lament. You hear it sung in the streets, in the alleys, in the fields where children once danced. The light dims. His sons will rule now, but none with his heart. And just as you begin to hope the worst is over, you feel it again, that same weight, that same chill in the bones. Babylon has begun to move. The footsteps of Babylon grow louder, not rushing, but relentless, like a river swelling in spring. You wake to horns in the distance. Not alarms, yet, but announcements. Proclamations. Babylonian officials arriving in Jerusalem with scrolls and gifts. wearing smiles that don't quite reach their eyes. You follow them through the gates, the scent of spice and foreign oil trailing behind like an afterthought. The people watch from behind half-shuttered windows. Everyone has heard of Babylon. Its walls, its temples, its power. Assyria is dead, Egypt is fading, and now, there is only Babylon. Josiah's son, Jehoahaz, barely sits on the throne before Egypt yanks him off like a bad curtain. They exile him, just another name scribbled onto the list of kings who never stood a chance. Pharaoh installs his brother, Jehoiakim. Instead, you see him ride through the city one afternoon. Posture perfect, eyes cold. He builds palaces while ignoring hunger. Collects taxes with a smile that grates like stone on stone. He is clever, but not wise. And Babylon notices. Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon's crown prince, comes westward. You trail behind his army, listening to the clatter of iron-shod feet and chariots humming like wasps. He doesn't level Jerusalem, not yet, just collects tribute and hostages, insurance. Among them is a boy named Daniel. You watch as he walks with the others, noble-born, head high despite the chains. His hands tremble only once. When he passes the temple, you catch his lips moving in silent prayer. They disappear into the east. And Jehoiakim? He rebels. Bad idea. Nebuchadnezzar returns. This time, not as a prince, but as king. Jehoiakim dies mid-crisis. Rumors say in disgrace. His body, thrown outside the walls like trash, never sees a tomb. Jehoiakim, his son, takes the throne, 18 years old. He lasts 3 months. You remember the day Jerusalem surrenders, again. The Babylonians are tired, precise. They strip the temple of gold, cart off treasures, and take more captives, thousands of them. Artisans, scribes, scholars, anyone useful. You see them march off, eyes glassy. Among them is Ezekiel. You help an old woman gather figs from a fallen market stall. She sighs. Maybe this is the worst of it. You don't have the heart to answer. Zedekiah is placed on the throne. He's not a warrior, not a reformer, not even a tyrant, just a man caught between pressure and prophecy. He tries to hold things together, listens to advisors, balances treaties, nods solemnly in meetings he doesn't understand. And then there's Jeremiah. You hear his voice long before you see him, hoarse, relentless, like wind that wears down mountains. He stands in the square, scroll in hand, declaring judgment, doom, surrender, surrender. He says, and you will live. The people hate it. Zedekiah locks him up. You visit Jeremiah in prison, dark, damp, forgotten. His fingers are ink-stained, his eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. He still writes, still speaks. He's not trying to be liked, only faithful. One day, Jeremiah sends a scroll to the king. Baruch, his scribe, reads it aloud in the palace. You're there, standing in the shadows near the brazier. Jehoiakim, back when he ruled, had done something memorable. He took that scroll and cut it, piece by piece, dropped each one into the flames. The fire crackled, the words vanished, but the silence afterward was louder than the fire. Even the guards looked away. Now, with Zedekiah, the scrolls are rewritten, re-spoken. Jeremiah will not go silent. Outside the gates, Babylon gathers again. This time, it's final. You hear the rumble of siege engines, the pounding of earthworks, the cry of watchmen on the wall. Inside, famine grows, bread disappears, mothers ration food in whispers. Your skin clings tighter to your bones. Ezekiel, in exile, sees visions, wheels within wheels, a valley of bones rising. You hear rumors of his dreams from returning traders. Strange images, but somehow true. Inside the city, Zedekiah panics, tries to flee. You run behind him one night, through a hidden gate, past the valley of Hinnom, over cracked hills. He's caught. The Babylonians take him to Riblah. You follow at a distance. Heart pounding. They bring his sons before him. Execute them. Then they blind him. The last thing Zedekiah ever sees is the end of his line. You sit by the fire as Jerusalem burns. Not just the houses. The temple. You smell cedar and gold and old incense curling up into the night. You hear the crash of sacred objects thrown down. Priests cry. Women wail. Children press ash onto their foreheads. It's gone. Everything. The Babylonians take what's left, more captives. More scrolls. More silence. The poorest are left behind to tend the ruins. The fields. The memories. You wander through the wreckage one afternoon. Step over broken tiles. Lay your hand on the place where the ark once sat. Dust coats your palm. A mainstream historical detail. This exile marks the end of the monarchy in Judah. There will be no more kings from David's line seated in Jerusalem. Not for now. Not for a long, long time. Scholars debate whether Babylon intended to annihilate Judah's identity, or simply absorb it. But standing here, you wonder if it matters. Either way, it feels like a funeral. Jeremiah weeps in the streets. You walk beside him, both of you barefoot, both of you silent. The book of Lamentations unfolds around you, each line a bruise. Each chapter a grave. How lonely sits the city that was full of people. And just as night falls again, and your knees finally give out beneath you, you feel it, a whisper, not from Babylon, not from Jerusalem, from somewhere deeper, a promise that exile is not the end. You sit by the river now, Euphrates, wide and indifferent, watching reflections of foreign stars ripple over foreign water. The wind here is softer, somehow, warmer, but not home, never home. This is Babylon, and you are in exile. You rest beside the others on the bank, your back against a crooked palm. A lyre lies silent in the dirt. No one plays music anymore, not since the soldiers mocked your songs. Sing us one of the songs of Zion, they laughed. No one sang, not because they forgot the words, but because the words don't fit here. You can't sing of holy mountains when the only hills you see are temple-top ziggurats devoted to Marduk. Your ankles ache. The dust here is finer, greasier. It gets into everything, your sandals, your teeth, your memory. And yet, time doesn't stop. You live, you work, you survive. You help build canals, stack bricks, record grain. The Babylonians are efficient masters, not cruel, but distant. They don't try to erase you. Not completely. They rename you, reorder you, reassign you, but you remain. You walk the streets of Babylon sometimes, neck craned. The city is enormous. Its walls stretch high and wide, thick enough for two chariots to pass side by side. The gates are blue-tiled and brilliant, especially Ishtar Gate, glazed in deep lapis with lions striding in proud procession. The temples rise like mountains. The ziggurats hum with prayer and calculation. You hear priests debating the stars, the mathematics of heaven. Even exile can't stop your awe. You begin to understand. Babylon isn't just a place. It's a force. It doesn't crush you, it absorbs you. And still, somehow, you remember. Sabbaths are observed quietly, in corners. Torah is recited by candlelight. Children learn Hebrew in hushed tones. You hear Ezekiel speak. You find him near the Chebar Canal. Eyes like burning glass. Beard tangled like a prophet's should be. He doesn't speak gently. He doesn't offer comfort. He offers vision. He speaks of wheels, of chariots of fire, of God not bound to the temple, but riding across the heavens. Mobile, majestic, terrifying. It shakes something loose in you. God isn't stuck in Jerusalem's ruins. He's here, with you. The elders argue whether this means the covenant still stands. The priests long for sacrifice, for altars, for blood and smoke. But Ezekiel declares, the new covenant will be written not on stone, but on hearts. You feel the words burn behind your ribs. Then come the letters. From Jerusalem. What's left of it? Gedaliah, the governor appointed by Babylon, has been assassinated. You feel the hope crumble like stale bread. The remnant flees to Egypt. Jeremiah is with them. Or maybe not. The news is garbled, mournful, jumbled like broken pottery. You wonder how much longer this will last. Years pass. Your hands are rougher now. Your voice lower. But the memories stay vivid. The scent of burnt offerings. The sound of psalms sung in courtyards. The sunlight through fig leaves. They visit you in dreams. One night, you see Daniel again. He's older, stern. You meet in the king's court. Yes, that court. Babylonian nobility now knows his name. The boy from exile has become a man of influence. Known for interpreting dreams no one else dares to speak aloud. You remember the story. Nebuchadnezzar's dream of a statue, gold head, silver chest, bronze belly, iron legs, and feet of iron mixed with clay. A stone, uncut by human hands, strikes the statue and shatters it. The meaning? Kingdoms fall. Only one remains. Daniel says it with such calm certainty that even the Babylonian scribes look nervous. But that's not the only dream. Later, you hear he was thrown into a lion's den for refusing to stop praying. He survives. You smile. Of course he does. The lions, the dreams, the furnaces. Babylon throws everything it can. And yet the faithful endure. Back at the riverside, you notice something strange. Hope. Small, quiet, but growing. New scrolls circulate. Isaiah's words. Promises. Comfort. Comfort my people. Make straight in the wilderness a highway for our God. You sit with a boy who asks, "What's Jerusalem like?" You close your eyes and describe it. The gates. The markets. The music. The olive trees. Your voice catches in your throat, but you keep going. Because someone has to remember. One night, an elder tells you a story whispered from the east. Cyrus, king of Persia, is moving. His armies swallow empires like dry bread. Babylon trembles. The walls may be tall, but fear seeps through cracks no stone can seal. Then it happens. Quietly, almost politely. Babylon falls. No siege, no slaughter. Cyrus enters the city without a fight. The people barely lift their eyes. And then the scroll comes. A decree. Cyrus says, "Go home. Build your temple. Worship your God. Return." You hold the scroll in shaking hands. The ink still fresh. The words almost unbelievable. You look around, at the people who've lived here for 70 years. The grandparents, the grandchildren. Some cry, some cheer, some hesitate. Because what is home now? Is it the place you left? Or the place you became? You begin packing anyway. Sandals, scrolls, stones from the riverbank. The road to Jerusalem is long. The land may be dry, but your heart is full. And just as you cross the first hill outside the city, a dove rises from the reeds, circling high into the soft morning light. You are going home. The dust kicks up with every step as you begin the long road home. It's not just a journey of miles. It's a peeling back of years. Of memories. Of something deeper that lived under the skin even when Babylon wrapped around your life like a second robe. You're not alone. Thousands walk with you. Families, elders, children who've never seen Jerusalem except in stories. You hear them whisper names of streets, gates, hills, as if conjuring a map from words alone. The air smells of bread and sandal leather and hope. The oxen grunt, carts creak, and someone behind you starts to sing a psalm in a soft, wavery voice. You join in. It's a long walk, months of blistered feet and star-crowded skies. But no one complains. You pass rivers that flow in the wrong direction, ruins that never healed, towns with names that sound familiar and yet not. Finally, one morning, the hills of Judah appear on the horizon, faint, wrinkled lines against a wide blue sky. Your breath catches. The city rises ahead, not proud. Not golden, but wounded. Walls broken. Gates charred. The temple? Just a blackened shell. Still, you cry. Not for what is, but for what might be. Zerubbabel leads the return. A descendant of David, barely known. Softly spoken, but steady. He doesn't ride a chariot. He walks. Like you. Like the people. You see him bend to help a child tie her sandal. And you think, this might work. The first task is the altar. Before walls. Before roofs. Before anything. The foundation of worship. You gather stones from the wreckage. Smooth them. Clean them. Lay them with trembling hands. The smell of fire still clings to them from decades ago. But when the first sacrifice is offered, the smoke rises clean. People cheer. Some weep. And then, the temple begins. You hold a chisel. Help carve. Hammer. Haul. You're not a builder by trade. But everyone here becomes one. It's the sound that sticks with you, rhythmic. Hopeful. A melody made of stone and sweat. Then come the old ones. The elders who saw Solomon's temple with their own eyes. They weep, not from joy, but from memory. They say this one is too small, too plain, too different. Their sorrow ripples through the crowd. You stand between generations, one praising, one mourning, and wonder which side you understand more. But the work continues. Until it doesn't, neighbors complain, letters are sent, accusations of rebellion, political delays. The work stops for years. The foundation sits exposed, cracked by time and wind. Hope sags like an old tent. You walk the empty courts and feel the weight settle again. Maybe this was too much to expect. Then Haggai speaks. He's not tall, not thunderous, just persistent. He says, "Why do you live in paneled houses while the temple lies in ruins?" Oof. You shift uncomfortably. He's not wrong. People had started rebuilding their own homes, their own walls, their own little kingdoms. You roll your eyes. Human nature doesn't change, does it? But Haggai keeps speaking. Zechariah joins him. The two of them stir hearts like wind stirs coals. And slowly, the people return. You do too. The hammers start again. The scaffolding climbs. One morning, you pass a boy singing to the rising walls. His voice high and bright like wind chimes. You smile. Then something strange happens. You feel something. Not wind, not weather. Presence. A heaviness that isn't heavy. A silence full of voice. Not like Solomon's temple. No fire from heaven. No clouds of glory, but something softer. Like the whisper Elijah heard. The kind you feel more than see. The temple is finished. Modest. Quiet. Beautiful in its own way. You place your hand on one of its smooth columns and let your fingers rest there. You remember the first one. The fire. The blood. The exile. And now this. A quirky little detail surfaces as you overhear a debate in the courtyard. Some claim that even though this temple lacks the ark, it still holds something greater. The promise that God dwells with his people. Not in gold, but in faithfulness. You like that. The priesthood returns. Sacrifices resume. Festivals bloom again. Tents in the streets. Songs at sunset. Torches lighting up the night like stars come down to visit. But not everyone is happy. There are whispers. Some say Zerubbabel should be king. After all, he has royal blood. But he refuses. He knows the empire still watches. Babylon may be gone, but Persia now rules. Quiet, far away, but always listening. You pass by his home one evening. No guards, no throne, just a man tending a garden, wiping dirt from his hands, humming an old tune. He smiles when he sees you. He will fade into history without fanfare. No statue, no golden record, but something about him will last. Because he helped bring you home. And just as you light a lantern and settle near the new altar to listen to the Levit's evening prayer, the wind shifts again. The pages are turning. But the story isn't over. The light of early morning filters through Jerusalem's rebuilt gates. Softer now than in the old days. Less gilded but somehow more real. You sit on a stone ledge, still warm from yesterday's sun, and watch children chasing each other through narrow alleys. Their laughter bounces off walls that still smell faintly of plaster and fresh cedar. A man walks past with a scroll tied carefully in linen. He doesn't know it yet, but he's carrying something that will change everything. You trail him. The temple court is quiet. The Levites murmur prayers. The air tastes of candle wax and old smoke. You can feel your pulse slow as the man approaches the inner court and hands the scroll to a priest, who reads a few lines, then freezes. The scroll is passed along. Whispers ripple. One word keeps repeating. Ezra. You remember him, back in Babylon. A scribe among scribes. Precise and passionate. A man who lived in scrolls the way others live in gardens. He didn't just read the law, he breathed it. And now, he's here. He returns not like a conqueror, but like a librarian with a mission. He doesn't rebuild walls. He rebuilds memory. You meet him properly during a public reading. The people gather in the square, men, women, children, no distractions, no phones, just a hunger you can feel in the air. Ezra steps onto a wooden platform, scroll in hand, robes neat, voice steady, and he reads, line after line, law after law, not just rules, but identity. You see faces change, some pale, some redden, some weep. The words hit like waves. And you realize, most of these people have never heard this before. Not like this. It's not a lecture. It's a homecoming. When he pauses, the silence is almost reverent. Then someone starts to cry. Then another. Soon, the square is full of weeping, not from sadness, but from that deep, aching recognition, like remembering a song you loved before you knew you'd forgotten it. You feel it too, in your chest, in your ribs, that old warmth of belonging, of being named. And Ezra? He says something strange. He tells them not to cry. Do not mourn. He says, this day is holy. The joy of the Lord is your strength. So they feast. Yes, really. They wipe their faces, share food, pass bread, pour wine. Laughter returns, hesitant at first, then brighter. The celebration doesn't ignore sorrow, it moves through it. You can taste that in every bite of the meal. Afterward, Ezra continues the work. He organizes priests, re-teaches the calendar, re-establishes the rhythms of worship. And he does something even more radical. He translates, line by line, from Hebrew into Aramaic, into the language the people now speak. He knows full well, a sacred word unread is a buried treasure. You watch as elders nod in recognition, as children mouth the words their parents once forgot. A quirky historical detail. This act, public reading and translation of scripture, may be one of the earliest examples of a community liturgy. Scholars call it a turning point in Jewish identity. You just call it beautiful. But not everyone's on board. Opposition stirs. Local leaders complain. There are accusations of exclusivity, division. You hear the arguments at the city gates. Shouldn't we welcome all who worship? Shouldn't we modernize? Ezra stands firm, not with anger, but with clarity. For him, it's not about rejecting outsiders, it's about remembering who you are. Still, his next move causes tremors. He confronts intermarriage, foreign wives, families caught in the tension between heritage and new life. The solution? Painful, divisive. He calls for separation. You sit outside the assembly court, listening to the wailing inside, children confused, parents heartbroken. Your stomach churns. You're not sure how to feel. Even now, scholars debate this chapter. Was it necessary? Cruel? Culturally protective? Spiritually rigid? You don't have the answer. You only know the sound of it lingers. Ezra himself seems changed afterward. Quieter, still dedicated, but graver. You see him walking the walls at dusk, murmuring scripture, his eyes never quite meeting yours. And yet, the work endures. The temple hums with new life. The calendar fills with holidays again. The people remember, not just the laws, but the stories, the promises, the long arc from Abraham to exile to now. One afternoon, you join a small group under a fig tree. A boy asks, "What does the law mean?" An old woman answers, "It means we're not forgotten." Her voice is cracked, but her tone is clear. You nod. That night, in a house lit by oil lamps, you help copy a scroll. Your hand shakes. The ink smudges. But you keep writing. Because memory is fragile. And so is faith. But here, under these stars, on this land, among these people, you believe both can be kept alive. And just as the candle burns low, and your eyes blur with sleep, you hear Ezra's voice again, in the courtyard, reciting aloud under his breath. Not to the crowd this time. Just to the silence. Just to the sky. You wake to the rumble of hooves and the metallic clatter of armor. The sunrise has barely gilded the stone rooftops when the first cloud of dust rises at the city's edge. It's not just another caravan. This time, the riders wear crests unfamiliar, and their faces carry the polished confidence of conquerors. Babylon is long gone. Now, it's Persia's turn to loom. But something else is coming, something darker. You stand atop Jerusalem's wall and squint into the sun. The air feels different, heavier. Even the breeze that usually carries the scent of olive trees seems wary. Rumors swirl. Rebellion in the provinces. Shifting alliances. Kings murdered in their sleep. It's a time of uneasy peace, like the stillness before thunder. And into this silence rides a man named Nehemiah. He doesn't look like much at first, neatly dressed. Quiet eyes, soft hands. Not a warrior, not a prophet, a cupbearer, of all things. But he's walked palace halls, heard whispers in royal chambers. And somehow, he has the king's ear. You remember the strange path he took. One moment, serving wine to Artaxerxes. The next, requesting, boldly, a leave to rebuild Jerusalem. And the king said yes. Even sent guards. And timber. When Nehemiah arrives, he doesn't announce himself with trumpets. He rides at night, inspects the city in silence. You follow behind him, feet crunching rubble, as he surveys the broken gates, collapsed walls, the places where memory has been gnawed to dust. He says little, but you see his fists tighten. The next morning, work begins, and not just with masons, goldsmiths, perfumers, priests, merchants. Everyone grabs a trowel. Even women join in. Your hands blister by noon. Your knees ache by sunset. But you keep building. Because for the first time in years, it feels like something is moving forward. Then the mocking starts. A man named Sanballat laughs from the nearby hills. These feeble Jews. Will they rebuild with burnt stones? Tobiah adds, if even a fox climbs that wall, it'll fall. You smirk. Because, honestly, the wall is kind of wobbly. But Nehemiah doesn't flinch. He prays. Then he assigns guards. Now you build with one hand and hold a weapon in the other. The trowel and the sword. A strange rhythm. Stone. Mortar. Glance over your shoulder. Stone. Mortar. Listen for footsteps. Sleep becomes fractured. You dream of walls rising in your sleep. Of shadows slipping between stones. One night, you swear you see a figure disappear down an alley with a Persian dagger glinting under his cloak. The pressure mounts. Letters arrive. Threats. Even offers. Come meet us in the plain of Ono. You roll your eyes. Oh no. Indeed. Nehemiah refuses every time. Historians still argue whether the conspiracy was truly that deep, or whether Nehemiah's paranoia saved the city. Either way, the danger was real enough for hearts to race every time the wind knocked a door loose. But you keep building. And, remarkably, in just 52 days, the wall is finished. You stare at it in awe. Not because it's perfect, but because it stands. Jerusalem breathes again. But the real work, you discover, isn't the wall. It's the people. Nehemiah opens the books. Finds records of families, lineages, old rolls long forgotten. He reinstates guards, Levites, singers, even gatekeepers. It's like watching a skeleton remember how to walk. And then, another surprise. Nehemiah cracks down on corruption. The rich have been charging interest, crippling the poor, seizing their land. You'd heard whispers, but now he makes it public. Calls them out, demands repayment, and they agree. You didn't expect that. You notice something odd during one of his public reforms. People stop mumbling. They listen. They nod. Some even cheer. It's not because Nehemiah is charming. It's because he cares. And because he doesn't just point fingers, he leads by example. He refuses the governor's salary, shares his food, works alongside you in the dust. Still, his enemies don't stop. A fringe detail from a long-forgotten scroll mentions a strange alliance, priests secretly writing letters to Sanballat. Playing both sides, Nehemiah records this in his memoirs with the tired frustration of a man who's seen too much. You see it too, the slow unraveling of idealism. Yet Nehemiah persists. He reinstitutes Sabbath laws, cleans the temple, rebukes intermarriage again. He isn't always gentle about it. His final reforms are sharp, even harsh. But you sense something underneath. Exhaustion, hope, pressed thin. Still, he prays. Remember me, oh my God, for good. You hear him whisper it as he watches a new priest stumble over a psalm. Or as he watches children racing down a rebuilt street. Laughter bouncing off stones he helped lay. It's not a happy ending. It's a human one. Nehemiah never becomes king, never performs miracles. But you'll never forget the sound of his footsteps at dawn. Checking the gates, speaking to the guards, smoothing a crack in the mortar with bare fingers. You realize, not every hero carries a sword. Some carry scrolls, bricks, and burdens. And just as the first raindrops of autumn begin to fall on the freshly sealed city, you pull your cloak tighter and turn toward the temple. Because Jerusalem, for all its flaws, still stands. And you helped build it. The stones of Jerusalem cool beneath your feet as the seasons change. You sit on a flat rooftop one evening, watching dusk stretch long fingers over the hills. Everything feels suspended. The walls are rebuilt, the scrolls reread, the festivals resumed, and yet, deep in your chest, there's that feeling again, a weight you can't name. It comes in whispers, not from enemies now, but from within. No kings, no prophets, no booming voices from mountaintops. The fire has dimmed, and in the stillness, time begins to blur. You blink, and suddenly decades pass. The city doesn't fall this time. It fades. You travel north for trade and feel it immediately. Jerusalem isn't mentioned anymore. Persia dominates the conversation. Then, like a creeping shadow, Greece begins to rise. A new language, a new pride, strange gods with sharp marble faces. And still, nothing from your prophets. No new psalms, no fresh visions. Some call it the silent years. But silence doesn't mean emptiness. You travel to the coast and visit a small community of scribes who guard ancient scrolls in caves. The air there smells of ink and limestone. They wear plain robes, speak little, and spend their lives copying words older than memory. They believe something is coming. They won't say what. You press your hand against one of the scrolls. The parchment is warm from sunlight. The letters curl like vines. You feel something stir. Maybe silence is just the pause before something sacred. You return home and notice other oddities. Foreign soldiers patrol the streets now. A man in a cloak whispers of revolution. Another speaks in riddles about heavenly armies and beasts rising from the sea. You catch the words, Daniel, and Apocalypse. It's all getting harder to follow. The people divide again. Pharisees, Sadducees, Zealots, Essenes. The law, once a unifier, becomes a wedge. You hear debates in the marketplace over hand-washing, tithing, even where to sit at dinner. The temple still stands, but the spirit feels thin. Once, it pulsed like a heartbeat. Now, it's more like breath on glass, visible, fading. You kneel there one afternoon, hoping for a sign, but no fire falls, no angel appears, just pigeons cooing in the rafters and the low hum of a priest rehearsing. So you wait, and wait. You notice the young people shifting. They speak more Greek now. They trade scrolls for stories, laws for legends. Some whisper of a coming one. Not a king exactly, but something more. A servant? A conqueror? The ideas are tangled. And yet, you keep hoping. Because even silence is a form of language. And deep down, you feel it. History isn't done yet. You wander the countryside in the years that follow. Hills, vineyards, secluded villages where the old names still mean something. You see farmers teaching their children the Shema. You see old women lighting candles on the Sabbath. You see weary merchants quoting Isaiah over dinner. The thread hasn't broken, just thinned. You keep a journal now. Notes scribbled in the margins of memory. Details you don't want to lose. The name of a forgotten king. The color of a prophet's robe. The exact shape of the stones in Solomon's portico. And one day, you meet a child who can recite the entire Torah by heart. You smile, because maybe it's not over. Maybe it's just beginning again. A quirky historical note. During this period, known later as the Second Temple era, scholars believe many core Jewish texts were finalized, perhaps precisely because silence invites preservation. It's also when synagogues emerged, not to replace the temple, but to keep community learning alive. You sit in one of these synagogues. The benches are rough, the windows small, but when the rabbi reads from the scrolls, people lean in like they're hearing fire crackle. Outside, history barrels forward. Alexander the Great sweeps through like a comet. Empires fall and rise like tides. The Romans come next, disciplined, cold, relentless. Their eagles watch from towers now. Their taxes bleed the city dry. And still, no voice from the heavens. You age. Your knees stiffen. Your memory grows patchy. You forget some of the king's names. But you remember the smells, the cedar of Solomon's halls, the dust of Nehemiah's bricks, the iron in the air the day Babylon arrived. You write them down, because someone has to remember. Even when the voice goes quiet, the story is still being told. One day, sitting in a dim courtyard, you overhear a whisper. A child was born in Bethlehem. You close your eyes and smile, because silence never lasts forever. You cradle a stone in your hand, its surface scorched and soot smoothed by time. Around you, the ground breathes heat, not from flame, but memory. You're standing in the wreckage of what was once the temple's foundation, charred earth. Fragmented pillars, broken hopes, and yet, beneath the ruin, something stirs. Zerubbabel is his name. A mouthful, sure, but one you'll hear whispered like a promise among the exiles. Not a warrior, not a prophet. He's descended from King David, yes, but he wears that legacy like a thin cloak. Not a crown. The return from exile has already happened. Or, well, it started happening. Cyrus the Great, yes, that Cyrus, issued his famous edict. The Jewish people could go home. He said, rebuild their temple. He even returned some of the stolen treasures. Like someone returning borrowed pots centuries too late. Quirky detail? Scholars still debate whether Cyrus did this out of personal belief in Yahweh or if he just had a thing for making happy provinces. But motives aside, you're here now. A crowd has gathered at the hilltop. Each person carrying whatever tools they own. Chisels, hammers, jars of oil, maybe just willing hands. The foundation has been laid again, and it's smaller than before. Your eyes trace the modest outline, and your heart sinks. The elders, those few wrinkled souls who remember Solomon's glory days, start to weep. Loudly, the young shout for joy, but the wails of grief twist through the celebration like a bitter wind. You stand between them, unsure whether to clap or cry. Zerubbabel doesn't flinch. He lifts his eyes to the heavens, to the half-built skeleton of a dream, and begins to organize, not with speeches, but schedules, not with miracles, but permits, and as the hammering resumes. A new kind of hope takes root, not loud, but stubborn. Then come the complaints. The Samaritans, neighbors who offer to help, are turned away. Old rivalries, theological differences, and a healthy dose of mutual suspicion. That refusal ignites a backlash. Letters are sent, accusations fly, construction halts. You stand there one morning, staring at tools gone quiet. Weeds sneak through the stones. You scratch your head, wondering if this is all going to unravel again. Years pass. Nothing moves. The temple remains an outline, like a forgotten sketch in the dirt. And then, one hot afternoon, you hear a voice calling in the city square. Not a royal decree, but something stranger. A prophet, Haggai. He's got dust in his beard and fury in his eyes. Is it time for you to live in paneled houses? He cries. While this house lies in ruins? You feel it like a slap. Around you, heads turn. The crowd is uncomfortable, but Haggai doesn't stop. Another prophet joins him, Zechariah. Dreamy-eyed and riddling, he speaks in strange symbols. Horses, lamps, flying scrolls. Honestly, it's a little much, but there's fire in his words. And somehow, it fans the coals under your feet. Zerubbabel returns to the site. Sleeves rolled up, jaw set. You help again. The work resumes. Quietly, determinedly. A mainstream historical note. The Second Temple was far simpler than Solomon's version. No Ark of the Covenant. None of the old opulence. Some say it looked humble. Others say it felt holy. One afternoon, you notice something odd. Zerubbabel isn't pushing to be king. Technically, he could try. He's got the bloodline, the resume, but he doesn't. Instead, he serves as governor, overseer, a steward. You're not sure whether it's humility or strategy, but historians still debate if Zerubbabel intentionally avoided a royal title to keep Persia off his back. Either way, it works. The temple is finished, not with trumpets and fireworks, but with hands red from stonework and feet blistered from hauling bricks. You walk through its courtyards and find them familiar, but quieter. There are no clouds of glory, no consuming fire, but incense rises. Songs echo again. Sacrifices resume. You sit in the shade one day, watching children skip past the altar. A priest ties a lamb's tether to a post. The air smells of ash and rosemary. And you wonder, not whether it's as grand as before, but whether it's enough. The answer? Maybe. Zerubbabel's story ends without a flourish. He fades from the texts like a man walking out of frame. But one odd thing lingers. In a genealogy tucked deep in later writings, his name shows up again. Not as a king, but as the ancestor of one. You can almost hear the scroll whisper, Zerubbabel, father of, and then it trails forward. A thin line of names that stretch into mystery. You leave the temple courtyard one evening, the sun spilling gold across the limestone. Behind you, the sanctuary glows softly. Ahead, the world waits. And just as your foot meets the threshold, you realize, sometimes the truest crowns are invisible, and the loudest legacies walk quietly through ash and stone. You wake to the sharp smell of foreign incense, sweet, smoky, unfamiliar. Somewhere in the city, a new shrine is burning. And even before you open your eyes, you know something's changed. Again, the air is heavier now, thicker. You step into the street. And your sandals catch on strange tile, smooth, Grecian, imported. Soldiers in gleaming helmets stand on corners with bored eyes and too shiny armor. And somewhere, in the murmur of merchants and clatter of carts, you hear it. A new language. Not Hebrew, not Aramaic, Greek, and not just words, ideas. Plato, Aristotle, Zeus, Apollo, all of them crowding the minds of young scholars who once memorized psalms. You duck into a local study hall and find scrolls of Torah next to scrolls of Sophocles. The rabbi shakes his head. It's all wisdom, he mutters, but there's tension in his voice. You feel it too. The people are split. Some embrace the change, new clothes, new speech, marble columns. They call themselves Hellenized Jews, walking confidently between two worlds. Others resist, clinging fiercely to the old ways, whispering prayers behind closed doors. And you're caught between both. You like the clean lines of Greek pottery, but you also miss the scratchy linen of your childhood. You hear the name Antiochus Epiphanes for the first time in a crowded square. Someone calls him mad. Someone else divine. He's the Seleucid king, one of the successors of Alexander, and he's about to make everything messy. He marches into Jerusalem not as a visitor, but as a storm. He bans Sabbath observance, outlaws circumcision, orders statues of Zeus to be placed in the temple. You're there the morning it happens. You creep behind the pillars and peek out as the sacred altar is defiled with pig's blood. Priests scream, elders faint, and your fists clench with a fury you haven't felt since Babylon. Your breath catches in your throat. It smells like smoke, iron, and sacrilege. You run out into the hills, to a village called Modin. There, an old priest named Mattathias refuses to obey the new laws. When a government envoy demands pagan sacrifice, Mattathias draws a blade instead. One slice, and history turns. You join him, because what else is there to do? His sons rally to the cause, especially the middle one, Judah Maccabee. They call him the Hammer. You smile, because it fits. These aren't trained soldiers. They're farmers with pitchforks, scribes with slings, shepherds with fury, but somehow, they win. Skirmish by skirmish, ambush by ambush. The hills become home. Your boots blister, your hands callous. Judah fights like a whirlwind, not just with muscle, but with strategy. You watch him use valleys like traps, feasts like bait, shadows like allies, and eventually, he takes Jerusalem back. You're there, filthy, exhausted, when the Maccabees enter the temple. The air is thick with soot and silence. You half expect fire to fall from heaven. Instead, it's Judah's voice that breaks the hush. He orders a cleansing, altars scrubbed, statues toppled, pig's blood washed away, and then, the lamp, the menorah, dusty and blackened, is lit again. You remember the tale that follows. The oil, meant to last one night, burns for 8, a fringe story. Maybe, scholars still debate its accuracy. But you were there, and in that moment, it felt true. You hold your breath as the flame flickers. Your face glows gold. Around you, others weep, not for loss this time, but for return, for light, for identity. A quirky aside. The holiday of Hanukkah stems from this exact moment. Originally a rededication of the temple, it later becomes a festival of resilience. Oil, and, strangely, spinning tops. Judah rules for a while, not as king, but as leader. But after him, things get murky. His brothers argue, power shifts. The Maccabees become the Hasmoneans, a dynasty with both priests and crowns. At first, it feels like a dream fulfilled, priest-kings of their own people. But dreams have sharp edges. You watch as corruption creeps in. Nepotism, infighting, alliances with Rome. Yes, Rome, that shadow to the west. Ever looming, ever intervening. One Hasmonean king, Alexander Jannaeus, throws rebels into pits and feasts while watching them die. Another, Salome Alexandra, brings brief peace, but the seeds of discord are already sown. You walk past a wall one day, and see it scrawled, "When priests become kings. Who speaks for God?" You don't know how to answer. What began as a righteous revolt now teeters on empire building. Taxes rise, purity falls, and your people, once united by memory, are now splintered by ideology. Yet still, the temple stands. And you stay. Because stories like yours don't end with fire or crowns. They drift forward on the wind, waiting for a quieter voice, a softer light, something unexpected. And just as you sit down to rest, thinking the worst has passed, you hear it, hooves, marching, and the sharp, metallic rhythm of Rome arriving. Again, the first thing you notice is the silence of discipline. Rome doesn't arrive with chaotic war cries or blood-drunk zeal. No, Rome comes in rows, shields gleaming, sandals synchronized, laws written in stone. You watch them enter Jerusalem like they're taking inventory. Not conquering, but make no mistake, this is a conquest. They're led by Pompey the Great, and his name echoes like a drumroll through the streets. He doesn't burn the city. He doesn't loot the temple. Instead, he walks right into the Holy of Holies, a place only the high priest should enter, and looks around like a tourist. Just curious. Then he walks out again. That's almost worse. Somehow, your skin itches. The sacred has been trespassed. And yet the heavens stay quiet. This moment marks the end of Jewish sovereignty. The Hasmoneans are demoted, divided. Rome begins to pick favorites. And soon, the real prize arrives. Herod. Oh, Herod. You feel his name in your stomach like spoiled wine. He's not fully Jewish, not quite Roman, just enough of both to be useful. He takes power with Roman backing. And from the moment he steps onto the throne, something shifts. He calls himself King of the Jews. But the people mostly call him a tyrant. And yet, he builds. You walk past scaffolds day after day as Herod transforms Jerusalem into a marvel. The temple? Rebuilt again. Grander than ever. Gold plates catch the sunlight so fiercely. You squint every morning just walking by. And that's the irony. You hate him, but you can't look away. Mainstream fact. Herod's renovation of the Second Temple was one of the most ambitious construction projects in the ancient world. Some say it rivaled the grandeur of Solomon's. But grandeur doesn't make peace. Whispers swirl. Herod killed his wife, his sons. He even drowned members of his own court. One Roman historian jokes that it was safer to be Herod's pig than his child. You laugh at that, darkly, but it sticks. Meanwhile, the people split further. Pharisees, lovers of law and tradition. Sadducees, elite temple aristocrats. Essenes, desert-dwelling mystics writing scrolls in caves. You try to keep track, but the factions multiply like weeds. Everyone's sure they're right. Everyone's waiting for something. Or someone. The word Messiah surfaces more often now. You hear it in the marketplace. In candlelit homes. In secret midnight gatherings. Not just as a hope, but as a hunger. Someone to free the people. Someone from David's line. Someone who could wear both crown and righteousness. Herod hears the rumors too. And he gets twitchy. He builds fortresses, Masada, Herodium, Antonia Tower, all carved into cliffs like warning growls. He keeps his own family under surveillance. You once saw him at a festival, eyes scanning the crowd, never resting, never trusting. Even his tomb, when he dies, is hidden under layers of stone and secrecy. And still, the temple stands. You spend your days there, sweeping marble tiles, watching coins clink into collection chests, smelling the steady waft of incense and burnt offerings. The priests wear crisp white robes. The courtyards are filled with doves, goats, prayers, and yet, you feel the tension under it all. It's in the way Roman soldiers hover just outside the gates. In the way religious leaders argue over minutiae while the people go hungry. In the way hope has started to taste more like desperation. And then, amid this swirl of politics, building projects, and prophecy, something small happens. A rumor. A baby. Born in a nowhere town. From a nowhere family. You don't think much of it at the time. Just another whisper on the wind. But the wind doesn't stop. Not this time. You hear about strange visitors, foreign wise men, guided by a star. About Herod ordering a massacre of infants. About a carpenter's son with a strangely ancient name, Yeshua. But that's not your story. Not yet. Yours is still inside these walls, walking the steps between columns. Watching the daily routine of a people ruled by others. But dreaming of a time before chains. You glance out from the wall of Jerusalem one dusk and see a man laying brick. He's quiet, focused, one hand stacking stone, the other resting near a dagger. Nehemiah would have liked him. That name floats through your mind like a ribbon in the wind. Nehemiah, the wall builder from generations before, who returned after exile not to prophecy or rule, but to organize, plan, protect. You remember how he walked the ruined walls at night, assessing, measuring, how he prayed with calloused hands, defended with weary arms. Quirky fact: Nehemiah insisted workers carry swords while building, construction and defense. Side by side, you wonder if today's stonemason knows that story. The walls are up now. But inside them, things are unraveling again. You lean against the cool limestone. Eyes on the horizon. Somewhere out there, beyond the cities, beyond the noise, is something forming. Something that smells not of incense or blood, but of wood shavings and lake water. But for now, you're still here, in Jerusalem, caught between what was and what might be. And just as the sun dips, casting gold over the rooftops, you feel it again. That quiet waiting. That hush before thunder. That pause before a story turns. The temple glows in the early morning like a promise. Gold catching the dawn like a secret only the stones remember. You step lightly across the plaza. The air still cool against your skin. And for a few moments, everything feels still. But the stillness lies. It always does. Inside the courtyard, the daily sacrifices begin. The bleating of lambs mixes with the rhythm of priests chanting psalms. You breathe in the sour sweet scent of blood, ash, and myrrh, and like always, it clings to your nostrils, settles into your robe, stays with you long after you leave. But today's air is charged, like the moment before lightning cracks. There's a man near the colonnade, standing where the shadows stretch long. He isn't dressed like a teacher. And he doesn't shout like a prophet. But people gather. You inch closer. His name, they say, is Yeshua, Jesus. In Greek, he speaks softly, like someone whispering into water. And the words ripple out. Parables, riddles, kindness, but also fire. Woe to hypocrites. Woe to those who exploit. He calls the temple a den of thieves. Your stomach knots. This isn't Rome's voice. It isn't Herod's. It isn't the Sadducees or Pharisees. It's something quieter, firmer, like stone worn smooth by time. He doesn't carry a sword, but he carries weight, and the people notice. They lean in, nod, cry, laugh. Children tug on their mothers' robes, asking questions. The elders squint, muttering about blasphemy. The guards watch, hands near hilts. One morning, you find him turning over tables. Literal ones. Coins scatter. Doves flutter skyward in panic. And you feel it in your chest, something old being shaken loose. He's not just teaching. He's challenging. And he's doing it in Herod's temple. The same temple built on the bones of ambition. The same temple once defiled by Antiochus. The same temple you scrubbed, lit, rebuilt, wept in. Mainstream fact. Most scholars agree that Jesus' cleansing of the temple was a major factor in the events that led to his arrest. You walk past later that evening and see him alone, kneeling, drawing in the dust. The crowd is gone. The city holds its breath. And then, the soldiers come. Not Roman, not at first. Temple guards, religious authority. But Rome gets involved quickly. Trials happen in the dark. Whispers replace witnesses. By morning, a cross is rising just outside the city. You don't go. You can't. Instead, you sit beneath a fig tree and stare at the wall, wondering, was he a king? A prophet? A madman? Historians still argue whether he intended to start a revolution or simply offer a new way of being. But for you, sitting in the dirt, what you remember most is his eyes. The way they looked at people like they already knew them. Like no disguise worked. Days pass. And then the rumors begin. An empty tomb. Appearances. Visions. A small group of followers claiming he's not dead. Not gone. But alive. You shake your head. This is madness. But it feels familiar. Didn't Ezekiel see bones rise? Didn't Elijah ascend in fire? Didn't Joseph dream the future? You brush the dust from your knees and stand. The city feels the shift again. Not like Babylon's fire or Rome's order or Greece's philosophy. This is grassroots, quiet, underground, small gatherings in homes. Bread, wine, stories. More and more people speak of him, not as rebel, but as Messiah, and not just for the Jews. For everyone. Quirky note. The term Christian originally began as a kind of insult in Antioch, mocking those who followed the little Christ. But it stuck, and it spreads. You see it move through towns and ports and marketplaces, through letters written by torchlight, through songs hummed under breath. It doesn't stop at walls or borders or languages. And yet, here in Jerusalem, the temple still stands. Priests still serve. Pilgrims still arrive, wide-eyed and dusty. But cracks are forming. Tensions rise. Rome tightens its grip. Zealots whisper of rebellion. The taxes increase. The cruelty sharpens. You can almost taste the unrest, like metal in the back of your throat. And then, boom. Revolt. 66 CE. You're older now, but you still march. The city explodes into chaos. Roman garrisons are burned. Imperial symbols are smashed. It feels like Maccabees again. But this time, there's no Judah the Hammer. No oil miracle. Just hunger, siege, and death. 70 CE. You hear the footsteps before you see the fire. General Titus arrives with legions. You flee to the hills. Once again, from a distance, you see it. The temple. The great golden temple. The crown of your people. Burning. You drop to your knees. Your hands tremble. Your tongue turns to ash. Because it's gone. Not defiled. Not damaged. Gone. A mainstream fact. The destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE marked the end of temple-based Judaism and the beginning of Rabbinic Judaism. It changed everything. Smoke curls up into the sky. And with it goes 1,000 years of memory, ritual, identity. And still, you remain. And so do others. Scattered, displaced, wandering, but not erased. You walk down the hillside, bare feet stinging from stone, and look at the city one last time. You remember David's harp, Solomon's wisdom, Josiah's tears, Ezekiel's visions, Jeremiah's ashes, Jesus' silence, and you whisper, "We are still here." And just as you start to fade from that place, that time, that breath in history, you hear the faintest sound. Not hooves, not fire, just a voice, telling the next story. The years drift forward like dust on desert wind, scattering pieces of the old world into corners of the new. You travel not with armies now, or kings, but with scrolls tucked under robes, with memories folded gently into stories. Jerusalem is no longer the same. Its gates have changed, its temples are ruins, but somehow, The story doesn't end there, it splinters. It scatters. And in scattering, it survives. You walk with a man through Alexandria. His beard is speckled with ash and ink. He's copying a scroll by candlelight, muttering under his breath about Moses, exile, and covenant. Around him, others read from Greek translations. Heads bowed, eyes lit with stubborn reverence. You realize, the kings may be forgotten, but the words are not. They've been carried into libraries, whispered into catacombs, etched into the soft hearts of exiles. You pass another traveler in Babylon. He's reciting prayers that bend eastward, toward a temple no longer there. And yet his voice holds firm. His spine straightens with every word. The ruins are far, but his faith remains unshaken. A quirky little fact, even today, Jews around the world end their Passover celebrations with a dream, next year in Jerusalem. You smile at the stubbornness of it, that ancient refusal to forget. As centuries pass, the old kings become myths, woven into bedtime tales and lullabies. David the shepherd, Solomon the wise, Josiah the boy king, they blur at the edges, fade into parchment and echo. But they live on, in your mouth, in your memory, in your movement. The Roman Empire shifts and breaks. Christianity blossoms. Islam follows. Jerusalem is pulled in all directions, a jewel everyone claims. A city layered in stories, each stone holding 1,000 hands. And yet, across time, across faiths, those old kings still haunt the soil. Mainstream historians still debate whether David and Solomon were historical figures or larger-than-life composites. Some say their kingdoms were modest. Others argue for golden splendor. But the myth is immortal. You walk into a modern museum. Centuries later, glass cases, whispered voices, security guards with earpieces. There, behind a thick panel, lies a tiny shard, clay. Broken, old. It reads, House of David. It's small, almost nothing. But your heart flutters. It means that somewhere, somehow, one of them was real. And suddenly, your dusty journey feels worth it. You sit outside that museum, watching kids chase pigeons, hearing languages swirl around like currents in a busy sea. Someone nearby hums a tune, familiar, old, full of longing. And in that moment, you close your eyes and rest. You've walked through kings and wars, prophets and betrayals, temples and ruins, through whispers of God and thunder of men, through olive groves and burning gates, through exile, return, silence. And now, the night has come, not to end you, but to let you sleep. And the last thing you hear? A boy, perhaps, asking his father, was King David real? The father pauses, smiles, says softly, maybe, but the story? That's what matters. And with that, the dream continues. Your body relaxes now, softened by the long journey. The soles of your feet no longer ache from temple steps. Your shoulders unclench from holding history's weight. Your breath slows, gentle as desert wind curling across moonlit hills. All the kings you met, the brave, the cruel, the lost, fade now into silhouettes, like distant campfires beyond the horizon. You're no longer walking beside prophets or crouched beneath falling walls. You're safe, you're still, you're here. The scent of incense lingers only in memory, like the final notes of a long-forgotten hymn. The sound of sandals on stone, of chants in echoing halls, has quieted into the hush of night. Your hands rest in soft linen. Your eyes begin to close. And even though the kings are gone, their voices trail behind like the tail of a shooting star. Stories carved into silence, names tucked into the corners of dreams. That same scratchy tunic you wore through empires? It's folded now, set aside by the bed. The sour smell of the chamber pot is gone, replaced by the faint perfume of olive wood and dust, clean, old, timeless. You don't need to remember every date, every name. You only need to remember how it felt. To walk with wonder, to question with courage, to believe in something larger than ruin. And so, as your thoughts drift gently like leaves on the Jordan, know this: you've traveled well tonight, you've earned your rest. The fire dims, the harp quiets, and your story settles.